Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So here we are at Srila Prabhupada's farm community near Karumandurai in Tamil Nadu in India. And we may wonder, what are we doing here? What is the purpose of coming here and trying to start a farm project? When we say a farm project, it means it's on the way to being a farm project. It's not fully established by any means. Now we have taken to Krishna consciousness with the aim of chanting Hare Krishna and going back to Godhead. That chanting can be done in any place, in any circumstance. Then again, why go to so much endeavor to make this farm project? Well, there are several reasons for this, which Srila Prabhupada explained again and again and again. One thing is that the general situation in modern society is very materialistic and not at all conducive for spiritual uplift. Is that echo function on?
Don't use the phone for recording.
Is the echo function on the sound? No? Sounds like it. No echo. Okay. The whole atmosphere of modern life is work, get money, enjoy sense gratification, which is just the opposite to the Krishna conscious ethic. In Krishna consciousness, we should live as simply as possible and maximize our time and our focus on spiritual uplift. And living among materialistic people, that association it makes it very difficult for us to be focused on Krishna consciousness. So one reason to have this community is so that devotees can live together and chant Hare Krishna together without the contaminating effect of being among materialistic people who will say, why are you wasting your time chant Hare Krishna? Just go to a movie. Or even if they don't say anything directly to deprecate the devotees, just their whole mood is one of, got to work hard and make progress and get money, like this. The whole atmosphere of the modern life drags one into sinful activities. Meat eating, alcohol, tobacco, illicit sex, and on and on and on. So devotees want to live purely. Another very important purpose of establishing these communities, which we don't emphasize maybe much ourselves, is cow protection. Without cow protection, there cannot be any real human civilization. But in modern India, probably kills more cows than any other country in the world. If only one cow was killed in India every 50 years, it would be a serious kalanka. What do you call that? Kalanka means dog. Yeah, what's the English word? Black spot, yeah. It would be a serious crime. Yeah, you could just say a serious crime. But thousands are killed every day. And although Hindus in general have a feeling that this is not good, because of the money economy, it will go on. Because modern society is based on money instead of dharma. Therefore, cow slaughter will continue. Because people think when the cow is old and is not giving any milk, then I have to spend money, better to sell it, then I'll get some money. And as a result, the whole atmosphere becomes completely sinful and polluted. People wonder why they're talking about stopping terrorism. Why is there terrorism? Why do people stick a bomb around their waist and blow themselves up and kill 20 other people at the same time? Because we're killing our mother, the cow, then we feel nothing about killing humans. So these are some of the many reasons for establishing these farm communities. There should be simple living and high thinking. Instead of modern life, there's no thinking about what is the purpose of life, and simply a very complex and difficult way of life. Now, to establish these communities, we find that it's often what we think is simple living is not so simple at all. It seems a lot more simple just to turn on a tap than to carry water 100 meters. There we have an example. Oh, I wish I could turn on a tap. And there are so many other things. If you just turn on the switch and the gas comes and it's easy for cooking. Otherwise you have to collect firewood and then make sure it's dry and then cut it and burn it, and then you get all this smoke if you don't have a good stove. And you have to take all the ashes out afterward. So how is it more simple? Well, actually it is more simple, overall. Because to get the water in the tap, you have to have a pipe and you have to pay for it. And then again, you're caught in the money economy. Especially if you're in a remote place like this, if the washer goes on your tap, then the whole thing's useless. And to bring a plumber might take 1 week. And what to speak of more complex technology like a tractor. If something goes wrong, then to get the spare part may take 1 month to come, and in the meantime your whole plowing time has gone. And it's so expensive. So then if you use a tractor, you have to produce more crops to cover the expense, which means you have to work harder. So you lost the simplicity. To get all these facilities, you need money, which means you have to work harder. So although it might seem like it's easier to have all these facilities, actually you have to end up working more. So, for spiritual life also, in any age, not only in the modern age or in Kali Yuga, we should always live as simply as possible. The more things we have, the more we're attached to them, and the more we have the desire to have more and more things. And you see, we'll have a cell phone, and then someone will come and say, hey, I got the new latest cell phone with all more facilities. And then you think, oh, I have to have the new latest best cell phone. And then you have to go and work to get some money, and then where's the simple living? So simple living and high thinking is possible if we have the consciousness that just whatever we need we shall take. Don't take on anything more than we need for maintaining our body. And concentrate on our real need, which is to become Krishna conscious. Now, it's understood that people who are raised in city life have a completely different outlook on life. And even after taking to Krishna consciousness, although we have a general idea that we should concentrate on the goal of life, which is becoming Krishna conscious, we still have all this conditioning. So we think that, yeah, I'd like to be Krishna conscious, but what's the harm in having all facilities also? In my Bhakti Shastri exam, we write that, yes, you can be Krishna conscious in any circumstance. But you think, well, I'd rather be Krishna conscious in heaven than in hell. And I think in heaven they probably have taps and cell phones. So why are you asking me to go to this hell where there's no taps? And, well, we still have our cell phones, but we're holding on to them. So, to actually take up simple living and high thinking requires a change in consciousness, which is possible if we understand the principle that we are meant for utilizing this human life for being Krishna conscious. Now, some devotees live in the city. Srila Prabhupada wanted city temples, mostly for preachers. And for devotees who have that kind of, they're fixed in that way of life, householders also, they can live in the city. But living in the city, you're going to have to suffer from the consequences of that, which include bad association, that your children will be subject to completely materialistic association and probably won't become very strong devotees. And in modern India, city life means a lot of hard work. Bifale Shevinu Kriparna Durajana Chapala Shuka Laba Lagire. Govinda Das Kaviraj, he penned these words some 500 years ago, approximately. A little less than 500, but seem to be more true now than they were then. That we are uselessly serving useless people to get some temporary and insignificant happiness. So people are working long hours, a lot of stress. Now, to set up these communities also requires a lot of work. But Srila Prabhupada's idea in making these communities was that ultimately, when they're established, then devotees will have more time for hearing and chanting about Krishna. Because if we just produce what we need instead of producing extra, then we need not work so hard. For instance, if your main crop is rice, then you have sowing, then replanting and harvesting and occasional weeding. But there are some times when there's a lot of work, but most of the time when the crop is growing, there's not much to do for that particular crop. And on a small piece of land, you can produce plenty of vegetables for your family, for one family. So, these farm projects are actually very important preaching projects. You may wonder, well, how is this preaching? It's preaching because we want to show people how to live a better way of life in Krishna consciousness. How we can be fully satisfied with very little material things. We can be far more satisfied by being happy in Krishna consciousness than people who have so much money and so many things. And even on the material platform, we're in a better situation than many materialistic people. We can live in a very peaceful situation with much less tension. We have fresh food, fresh water, fresh air, tasty, nourishing food, as compared to what you get especially in the Western world. The food has you get like these huge fruits and no flavor whatsoever because it's all artificially grown. I just saw something that there was a McDonald's hamburger which was 20 years old. Somehow it was still there, and it still looked almost like it was new because it's made like that with all the preservatives, and it's all so artificial. This whole idea of having a fridge is actually militates against good health and good food. Traditionally in Indian homes, 3 times a day you'll cook fresh food, every time. But now they keep some vegetables in the fridge for 3 weeks. And then when they cook something and they stick it in the fridge and then they eat it again later in the day or 3 days later, 5 days later. So nothing's fresh. So this is very important preaching, that people will come and see that, these people, they're living without so many facilities, but still they're so happy and they're so spiritually fulfilled. But the devotees who are establishing these communities should have some understanding of what we're doing, and they're going to have to make some sacrifices. Just like building these buildings would not be a normal practice in an established community, to build so many buildings as you are doing now. So there's a lot of hard work to make some infrastructure. But eventually we want to move to the platform of self-sufficiency. At present, some devotees who are appreciative of this project, they're sending some funds to help it go along. But the aim should be self-sufficiency as soon as possible. That means you eat only what you produce. You wear clothes that you produce. That means you have to produce the cotton, jute, hemp, wool, or silk or whatever, and taking that raw material, you make thread, and then you make cloth, and you may make clothes out of that, the whole process from beginning to end. Kapra. Kapra. You say kapra also. For clothing? Cloth? Oh, I heard the word kapra. It means something. I think hemp is not used for clothing in this country. Huh? Means it's the same plant as bang. Bang, yeah. But that makes a very good fiber, actually. Very first-class fiber. Could do. Just hope the babas don't come around and start smoking it. What's this? An act of rebellion. We will have self. All of the four all at once got put up here. What else? That means self-sufficient means in-house medical care, unless there's something very serious. In-house education. And education need not be very much for most people. For instance, if someone's going to be a potter, he doesn't need to have a PhD. And actually he doesn't even need SEC. What is that called? SSC. You don't need to read and write to be a potter. Or a farmer, or a weaver, and so on and so on and so on. There are many things which the money culture that we're used to facilitates, that we, as devotees, we're used to using in devotional service also. Is there another word for it? Because when we say money culture, then you translate it as kalacha, but that kalacha means like a high culture, isn't it? We're talking about, it's more like jivan shaili, in just way of life, lifestyle. Is there another word? Because when we talk about the money culture, it's a very low. It's not, kalacha means something high, isn't it? Means something high. We're talking about culture here just as a way of life. Lifestyle, yeah. Way of life. When we say culture, it doesn't necessarily, you just automatically translate it as kalacha, but that means like a high culture. Whereas we're just talking about a way of life. The word in English, culture, it can mean high culture, and it just can mean just a way of life. Whole way of life and thinking also. So we don't want to give it, when we're talking about the money culture, we don't want to give it like it's something very high. Yeah, but the word culture in English, it can mean like high culture, even by their estimation. I mean, like classical music and gentlemanly behavior. But it can also, you also talk about hippie culture, punk culture, which is very low also. So if you say someone's very cultured, that means that it's like high class. But you can also use the word culture without any sarcasm, like that punk culture, yob culture. Yob means like an uncultured, very uncultured. So, anyway, you can think about it and try and think of another word. You can look up the word lifestyle. Even lifestyle is, when we turn that yob culture. Yob is a word, it's the opposite of B-O-Y, it's Y-O-B. So it's young boys who, just like animals. Yeah. So, yeah, there are many things in the modern. In Hindi, they say Jivan Shaili. Do you have any such word there?
We can lifestyle. We can
Lifestyle, yeah.
Money-based lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like that.
Money-based lifestyle. So there are many things that we're used to taking advantage of in our devotional service also. Just like, for instance, we may be sitting here in class one morning and the speaker speaks about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes in Puri and how Jagannath is presiding in Puri with his brother Balabhadra and his sister Subhadra. And someone sitting there may say, oh yes, I went and it was so nice to have the darshan of Jagannath, Subhadra, Baladev. And you may think, well, I'd like to go also. And it's quite common that groups of devotees from various parts of India, ISKCON devotees, they go on a group tour to Puri or Mayapur, Vrindavan, Tirupati, and so many famous holy places. But if we've cut out of the money culture, then we don't have money to go. And we're used to using mobile phones, yeah, which seems very convenient. If someone's on the other side of a field, or you can just use your phone to contact them. I remember in the time I stayed in the villages in Bengal that it was a common thing that someone would call out with a very loud voice. They'd call out to someone who you can just see them in the distance, just a small figure in the distance, and they'd call out in very loud voices, and that's a method of communication by shouting from like half a kilometer away or something. Whistling, not in Bengal. That's considered very low class. Maybe in UP. Is it? Here in Tamil Nadu, they whistle. Whistling is considered very
loud. Okay.
Whistling is considered very inauspicious. It attracts all low class ghosts and rakshasas.
Now from cinema
they picked it up. Previously they would not do that. All of India, no one would whistle. Hey Vishnu, Kotai Atish. I'm just this. They call out, Vishnu, where are you? Come here. Call out like this. Not that they'd have any like conversation, but just like some basic communication. And you can also, it's very convenient to use mobiles to call your friends and relatives, and you can even preach to them. But as with all modern conveniences, whether used for mundane purposes or for Krishna conscious purposes, they all require money. And then again you're caught in this vortex, money vortex, the trap, the money trap. Now, even in traditional self-sufficient communities, people would produce somewhat more than their immediate need. The Vaishyas are the ones who are producing food, principally grains and milk products, because they have to feed everyone. The barber, the potter, the local blacksmith, and the workers, they have to. Not everyone is producing food, so those who don't produce food, they do other services, and they get given some food. They get given one bag of rice at harvest or something like this. So little, and then extra may also be stored for emergency. Just like nowadays, the farmers, they grow cash crops. They buy Monsanto seeds and they get fertilizers, and then the crop fails, and then they commit suicide because they're completely finished. But in a self-sufficient culture, when there's a good stock of grains, then you keep some extra as emergency. There's a whole social structure from the village level up to the king may be overseeing a larger area. So if there's a disaster in one area, for instance, if there's a flood in one area, then the king can mobilize from another area some resources and bring to help the people in the flooded area, as happens even today, more or less. But we are attempting to start a whole, it's going back to the old system, but practically for us it's starting a whole new system. So, yeah, the point I'm making is that we may produce some extra, but not so much extra that we have to have all these different conveniences and things. Traditionally, people would go on pilgrimage in a group, maybe from the same village. That would be in the season when there's not much farm work. For instance, in the hot, dry season. And that would be a pilgrimage place close by because they go by walking. So maybe 20, 30 kilometers away, some temple, they'd walk and take 2-3 days to go, 2-3 days to come back, and that would be their pilgrimage. And on the way they'd chant and like this. And longer pilgrimage like to Puri or Vrindavan, that's once in a life, and that's generally for older people. Because you have to walk. And it takes a long time to go. So people for older people who don't have immediate children to look after, they may go. So if we're going to be self-sufficient, we may have to cut down on all this. We're used to going on this pilgrimage, that pilgrimage. But we can more than compensate for that by making the whole project just like Vrindavan. What is better, to live working just like any kame ass for 51 weeks of the year, and 1 week jump in a train and rush off to Vrindavan and then rush back and then get back to your ass-like occupation, or every day you have time for hearing and chanting with the devotees? Actually, in these farm communities, it is very important to have first-class deity worship, as in Hungary, so that all the devotees, that they can concentrate all their work, all their attention is for Radha Shama Sundar. So that's also required in due course of time. But in the meantime, we should be prepared to forego these conveniences. Convenience means added inconvenience. Commit to live as simply as possible. Now you may say, well, I, Bhakti Vikasa Swami, am living in a little hut there, but I have electricity, so I'm cheating. Well, I apologize for that, but my main service is writing books, so I require for that purpose. But in many ways, it's not required for everyone, and I'm if it wasn't for this writing, I'd be quite happy to live without any electricity. It's very good, actually, because then you take rest early and then you get up early, which is essential for spiritual life. Now, the way modern society is set up, it practically requires that sometimes you have to go to the city for something to register something. Just like if you have a child, you have to register the child and this and that. So that has to be borne in mind. We may need some extra income but the tendency should be to minimize as much as possible. As far as outside preaching is concerned, well, Srila Prabhupada described about that at the Hyderabad farm. Hyderabad ISKCON farm, Prabhupada said the brahmacharis and sannyasis, they can go in the surrounding village area on bullock carts. So although there were traveling Sankirtan vans in India at that time, Prabhupada said from the farms you can go out by bullock cart for preaching. Srila Prabhupada recommended in America that he told the devotees, don't use electricity. For light you can grow castor plants and make castor seed oil, and you can use that lamp. What other questions are there? We always have to remember that we're not here just to work. The main purpose is for Krishna consciousness. So there has to be a good balance between hearing and chanting and performing services. Often devotees ask about keeping a balance between our spiritual activities and other activities. or let's say are directly spiritual activities, and those which we dovetail in Krishna's service, like farming the land. Yeah, keeping the balance is always a delicate task, because it's the nature of this world that we can always find more and more things to do. But we have to keep time aside for hearing and chanting about Krishna. Otherwise, dharmasvanurshita pungsa vishvaksena katasuyaha notpadayad yadi ratim shrama eva hi kevalam. It's hard work without any tangible result unless we develop a taste for hearing and chanting about Krishna. Regarding phones, I know that at Golok Dham near Belgaum, I don't know what they do now, but they use Gokul Dham. What did I say? Golok Dham. Gokul Dham, they have one cell phone for the whole project, which they only attend to for 1 hour a day. That used to be the thing. The rest of the time it's only on for 1 hour a day. And Madhav, who's there on the spot overseeing the project, he hardly leaves there at all. He's just there all the time. Madhav Prabhu, Madhav Das Brahmachari. Sometimes, one time he came here. Yeah, occasionally they can drag him out to lend his experience to other projects like this, but he has no interest in going to towns. He just wants to develop that project. So things like that we can. That I already mentioned that if just one washer goes out, then there's a whole it is troublesome to have a well, no doubt, but like I say, you pay for the convenience in hidden inconvenience. With an open well for water, nothing can really go wrong unless the water goes completely dry. And it's less likely to go dry because you use less water if you have to pull it out every time. Pull it out with the pulley. The other alternative is step-in wells. That's you have in Gujarat and mostly in Gujarat. Here you have them also. You walk down to them. Yeah, that's very common in Gujarat, but not nowadays. They're just I've seen, but they're out of use now. And in Bengal, they have big man-made lakes, pukors, and the big ones are called diggis.
Because now water level was very much.
Yeah, big. It's gone down because of all this mechanized farming and industry. And that's actually very good for health, to pull up the water and then carry it. In the cities, you have all these conveniences like motorbikes and electric lights and all these things. But then you have no work. You have to pay money for that. But because you have no physical work to do, they also have to pay money to go to the gym to get some exercise. The whole thing's ridiculous. The women become very healthy by churning the buttermilk and by grinding the grains for making idlis. I was saying nothing can go wrong with the well. I remember must have been about 1977 or 1978. I was in Egg Chakra, Nityananda Prabhu's birthplace in West Bengal. And there was a very deep well, and somehow or other I dropped the bucket in, and I thought, oh no, now I'm completely, this is terrible. I dropped the bucket in the well. Then some Babaji who was living there came and looked, and then went away, and he came back 2 minutes later with a huge long bamboo pole with a hook at the end, and just stuck it down and pulled the bucket up. And this much technology you need. Yeah, that must have been late 1977 or 1978. Where's my life gone? So the whole idea is simple. Keep as simple as possible. Now, in modern India, they're promoting all the children should go to school. We saw these children going to... maybe they weren't going to school on Sunday. But they need this whole idea that we're helping the children. Actually, you're not helping the children. You're helping the big companies who need educated people to work in their factories. They need people at least with some basic technical skills. These demons are very cunning cheaters. They say, no, we have to give all the children a right to education so that they can improve their life. And the kids end up in some factory. Most of them, they'll be in a factory or driving an auto rickshaw, or the girls will be prostitutes, and the demons are happy. And the people think, oh, I'm improving my life. My parents were very backward. They just lived on the land and they didn't read and write. But I'm very advanced. I live in the city. I earn plenty of money so I can have wine and women, and then join some political party. Just completely spoiled character. So our idea is no need of this false sophistication. Better people, they don't have all this demoniac education. But they learn who is Krishna, who are we, what is our relationship with Krishna. So if boys are very intelligent, they can be trained in Shastra. But if not, they can be trained from a young age to do whatever their father is doing. Just like a few years ago, in Baroda, there was an artisan or an artist, came from Bengal, and he was making some panels, out of plaster of Paris, the pictures of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela, Krishna Leela, and painted, it's colored and painted, and it looks very nice. His son was there. His son was about 10 years old. His son was helping him. So I asked that artist, so your son can do what you're doing? And he said, he's learning, he's helping me. He'll go on helping me. And then when he's old enough, he can do by himself also. So his son wasn't going to school, but he has an occupation. Whereas modern kids, they go to school, but they don't have any occupation fixed up for them. His boy was very nice. There was a very nice relationship between the father and the son. It wasn't that they had completely different lives like in the modern society. The father's doing one thing, the boy's in a completely different world, but they were together all the time doing the same thing, and there was a strong bond between them. The role of women in traditional societies, well, it's different depending on what their husband does. If their husband is a king, then there'll be a queen, and then they have to manage the court, the domestic affairs of the court, of the palace or whatever. But for most women, the standard duties are cooking, cleaning, having children, looking after children, and so on. And for everyone, there is chanting Hare Krishna. So the women in our farm communities, they're probably not going to be astronauts. They're probably not going to become MLAs, members of the Legislative Assembly, politicians. Village politics, that's there, but that we also don't want. Just the traditional role of women all over the world is to serve their husbands, look after the children, and tell their children stories of Krishna and Sita and Rama. Live simply, be happy. Generally, women, in traditional societies, they work, they have a lot of work. As I sometimes used to hear my biological mother say, a woman's work is never done, it's never finished. So these are some ideas of the social roles. And of course, the most important thing is that everyone chants Hare Krishna. Everyone is doing doing whatever we're doing cooperatively in the service of Srila Prabhupada. Okay, there are some general ideas. I presume at least those who have committed to come here, you've all heard this all before. But as with all topics in Krishna consciousness, we need to hear them again and again, because Maya always has a better plan. Just do a little work, and you'll get lots of money. Just invest a little money and you'll get a good business, and then you won't have to work the rest of your life. Right, Preeti Vardhana? So many times devotees think, I'll just do a little business, then I'll make lots of money, and then I'll be free for the rest of my life. But instead they lose all the money very quickly, and they have to spend the rest of their life repaying all the debts they made. Hare Krishna! Hare Krishna. Any question, comment, or protest, please? Sawal. Okay, speak loudly. You have to practice yelling to the other side of the field. Just one thing before I answer the question. Just see this kid playing here. Let him play. Now he's got a piece of bamboo and he's playing with it. He's completely. You don't have to buy all these fancy toys. They'll just find something and play with it. See, he's hitting the earth with it and then putting the earth through the pipe so it comes out the other end. So you don't need to spend money on all these fancy toys. They'll just pick up a stick somewhere and that'll be their toy. So what's the question?
The first question that regarding this yatra, unless we have fixed the timing, unless we fixed up in our chanting, reading, Shravana Kirtana, we have till that time we have a desire to go to Srirangam or Tirupati.
Till we have established the deity worship properly, till then the desire to go to
You saying this, chanting, reading also. That we came from materialistic life to Krishna conscious life, particularly here at the farm community.
Thank you for that.
We expected that here we will live more happily than the materialistic way of life. So here, till we have the time for fixed chanting, reading, and till we fixed up in that, having Shravan Kirtan regularly, and we have always some desire to go to Tirupati, Srirangam, like this, some holy places. So how to now,
overcome that desire. Well, first of all, thank you very much for coming here. You do have regular hearing and chanting, isn't it?
Mostly we have time for reading, sometimes not.
But you have a regular morning program, especially now when this construction's going on. Yeah. But in general, I think most of the householders here would have to say that after coming here, they're getting more regular hearing and chanting with devotees than they had before they came here, when they were just at home in the city. So you're already having a good advantage. And like I said, in the beginning, there are going to have to be some sacrifices to establish the whole community. The desire to go to Sri Rangam is not a bad desire, but you may not be able to, but you may just have to consider that you may not be able to do it as often as you would if you were working in the city. But overall, it's better for spiritual life to have a daily, full morning program than to have a very weak general sadhana and time to time, once or twice a year, go on some yatra. One thing you have to start as soon as possible here is celebration of festivals here in a grand way. And that involving all the local people also, Janmashtami, Ramnavami, like this. You have to remember we're still in the very beginning stages here. But that is important to begin that as soon as possible. Today we're having something like that for the first time. Local preaching is also very important. One time I was speaking with Shivaram Maharaj, who's made a much appreciated throughout our societies. It's much appreciated the farm community he's made in Hungary. And he told me that actually you need everything all at once. I said, as soon as you start the community,
you need all the things at once.
Devotees have immediate needs for education for their children, for nice deity worship, for festivals, and all these things. But he said, practically speaking, it's not possible. So devotees in the beginning, they have to make sacrifice for the sake of the future. And it's my personal experience that you can, although you may have to struggle in certain situations, that Krishna reciprocates if you're really trying to do something to serve Krishna's mission in this world. So make Vrindavan here. Shri Vrindavan e Nadi. There's one song in which the singer's singing how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates are there, and then they all realize that Vrindavan is here in Nadia. So if you have a whole community of devotees living simply, protecting cows, chanting Hare Krishna, then it's Vrindavan. The sound of the birds you won't hear in the city. If you hear any birds, it'll just be wah, wah, the kakam, the crow. All day here you'll hear the birds chirping. And beautiful champa trees. There's so many champa flowers. So nice. So this is natural opulence. They swivel around. And can it pick up that champa tree from such a distance? What are all these other trees? I don't even know. Banana, of course. That huge tree is a tamarind tree. Of course, so big. Oh, that's more than one tree, is it?
It's only one tree.
Huge tamarind tree. How old is that?
More than 100 years, definitely.
Yeah, you can have mangoes here. Yeah, already there are mango trees. Down there is some. Sapota? Can you grow here? Sapota? Chiku? Yeah. But I don't see any sapota trees here. Are there? Maybe you have to plant some. Everything. Dalim, there was that. Anar, pomegranate. You can grow all the things. You can grow here. Lemon, avocado, I think you could probably grow here. You have to try. It's the same climate as Bangalore, very similar. They grow in the Bangalore area. Papaya, of course. Yeah. Bananas, everywhere banana and papaya. So many nice fruits are there. Krishna is giving. Hare Krishna. Anything else?
You say that to establish this self-sufficient farm is a lot of
Adhikamana kashtam.
Yeah. And
lot of trouble.
in this situation, how should be our attitude?
But everywhere there's trouble. If you go in the city and work with materialistic people, you have trouble. The only difference here is that you have trouble. It's hard work, but then you're among devotees. It's much better than being among non-devotees. People in India, they want to go and work in the Gulf. So, Sevananda, you were in Saudi Arabia. Was it? What? It was just like Swarga Loka, was it, in Saudi Arabia? Like Narakam, like hell. Narakamana. Is that it? Is it? Like Narakam Madri. Then Preeti Vardhana was in Dubai, but he's chosen to come here instead of being in that modern, opulent city of Dubai. Actually, most people who go to Dubai, they live just the same as they do in India. Their life, it's not any better. They maybe save a little money over a few years. Otherwise, their living standard is not... If they have the same living standard as they would as if they were here in India. Maya always makes us think that if I do something else, it would be better. She always gives us some plan that we can do. Like I said, you invest some money, you make lots of money, then you can live peacefully, but then you lose it all and then you have to work all your life to pay off. Definitely if you live in the city, some kinds of problems that you have here will not be there. But you'll have other kinds of problems. And here you have association of devotees, good sadhana. So this is better for spiritual life. Your children, they have a big playground. In the city, they have to play on the street. Dangerous, yeah? They have no place to go. or they're in the house shouting and screaming and driving you crazy. Here they can go outside and shout and scream as much as they like.
Maharaj, usage of mp3 players for hearing seems
Oh, it's there, but yeah.
advantageous, because when we are working, we find difficult to develop the habit of like bhajans and chanting, but when we are hearing it looks like easier to concentrate.
That's an interesting one. But actually that has a disadvantage also when all the devotees are doing work with their earphones listening to lectures, is that everyone's in their own world and they don't interact with each other much. So maybe better you do have the habit of learning to chant while you're working and then talking to each other. Okay, you all go take breakfast and Hare Krishna.